All right, good morning, everybody. We are officially on the record. Let's go ahead and get this workshop underway. We did not have anybody sign up for the public comment section, so we will go straight into the budget.
Woo-hoo. Yes.
All good news.
Jennifer,
Only good
there you
news
go.
today.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Morning.
That felt formal, so.
So, as Elizabeth said, we are going to be talking about budget. This will be our fifth conversation regarding the budget this year. We're going to be hearing about compensation and benefits for next year as well today. And then we will have one more budget workshop in May, which we hope to have some more solid numbers at that time. And then in June, at the June board meeting is when we approve the budget. So we wanted to start with just kind of an updated forecast of where we are this year. So in the first column is the budget that was approved in June of last year for this current fiscal year that we're in. And you can see down in the bottom, we adopted a budget that had a $9.8 million deficit. So we went through some work and we had some actuals and we talked and we amended, the board approved a budget amendment in February, so that in the second column, we now are showing a budget deficit of $451,000. If you look and recall, part of that is because we sold the land this year that we were able to help offset our deficit by $5.4 million. So our operating deficit was $5.9 million. Sold the land, that helped us to the tune of $5.4 million. So our budget is at a $451,000 deficit. We have made some projections for the rest of this year, so I wanted to go over that. That's in the third column. This is just where we are as far as our forecast now. And what we've done is highlighted in yellow any of the changes that we have from our current year budget. We are looking at an increase in investment income. We are seeing higher rates in our investment rates. So based on our cash flow, higher rates, we're able to get more investment income. So that's helped us. I also had talked about in the weekly last week that we had a property value study. We can go back 3 years, and we went back to 2020. We have a consulting firm that helps us with that. That actually is a one-time revenue increase of $967,000 from the year 2020, but we get to recognize it in this year. So that's helping us on the revenue side. So that brings our revenues up to $179 million. We have not made any changes on the expenditure side for the forecast. So that leaves us an operating difference of $4.4 million deficit. We do again have the land, which is still there, and that helps us. And so our budget now is to the good by $1,106,649 is the forecast for this year. Awesome. It is.
Great job.
Great job. Now, and we have worked very hard, to try to look for ways to save, and also, of course, some revenue-generating ideas. But we still have that $4.4 million operating deficit. That if we didn't have the $5.4 million land coming in, we would still be at a deficit. So, but it is better than it was originally when we originally started this process.
You're trying to say it's a lot better now than before you got here?
I cannot take any credit for that anyway, but we have been working hard.
We'll agree that we're glad you're here. It's
Yes.
okay. Yes, we'll
We
agree
have
we're
good
glad.
team and we have been working hard, I will say that. So that's kind of where we are right now for this year. And then what we want to talk about is kind of course, the focus is on next year. We're trying to develop next year's budget. As we've talked about many times, we are in the legislative session. Seems to be a lot of talk about property tax relief and vouchers. Not a lot of talk about increasing basic allotment so far. So we are watching that. I understand there's some big meetings this week, both on the House side and the Senate side. So we're monitoring it daily. Any information, that we get, we're staying on top of that. Of course, so legislative session, we want to have raises and compensation for our employees, and we also want to increase benefits for next year. And then we have forecasted growth from the demographer, our enrollment growth. So these are kind of our three big budget drivers going from this year to next year. So we have worked on a preliminary forecast. So we have not taken into consideration any bills that the legislature is considering. We are using under the current law, and based on the projection of the 13,703 in enrollment from the demographer. And we've also, through our work, looking at ways that we can save, and also from some revenue generating ideas, this is where we are. So we just are basically using our revenues that we are rolling forward from 22-23. We have been working on that second line item for $500,000. We have been working on taking some indirect costs over from the federal grants to the general fund to help the general fund. And then with that, again, the enrollment increase, using the current law, no increase in basic allotment, we think we would get 3.9 million more in revenue. So that gets us to 182.5 million. If we carry forward the expenditures going down to the next line, and then looking at some of the cost savings that we've been working on, we have some FTEs that we've been able to reduce through efficiencies and through attrition. We have some efficiencies in transportation that are going to give us some savings. Then we also have some things that we know we're going to need to add. One would be inflation for our non-payroll part of the budget. So right now we're using 8%. That as we get closer to our actual budget allocations and for the departments and for the campuses, that number will get tighter. But right now we're just using that as a placeholder. We did fund $2 million of teacher salaries this year out of ESSER, which we will have to absorb back into the general fund next year. So that's $2 million. So that gets us to total projected expenditures of $186.4 million. So without any raises, without any changes in the law for funding, we're looking at a $3.9 million deficit at this time. These are early days. This is our first look at this really closely, but we will have more information at the next meeting. Hopefully, we'll have more tighter legislative information. So that's what we're looking at right now, without any raises. That's just staying as we are now. And then for next steps, we are continuing to look at ways to increase our budget. We are monitoring what's happening in the legislative session. We will receive our property values later this month in April. So that would be more information because that goes into the state funding formula. And then we will have our next budget workshop on May 1st. So we will have more information in May.
And on the basic allotment, right now, we're still figuring with the current basic allotment, knowing that, so what you usually see is that's what gets held hostage to later in the session as to, okay, well, how much basic allotment do you want and how much are you willing to give? And that's where you're going to see a lot of focus on vouchers. There's some legislation out there that would increase, offer a $6,000 pay increase per teacher for districts under 20,000 students, and 2,000 teacher pay increase for districts over 20,000 students, and that's an attempt at trying to get the rural Republicans to support vouchers. And so there's going to be a lot of this going on that we're going to see over the next month or two. And legislators are being told districts have to know so they can figure their budgets, but we also know they often don't do anything until the summer. And so that's where, once again, Jennifer's doing a great job of condensing things. She's still working on this year's current budget and still finding ways to improve those numbers, and I know she's still working on that. And then on our end, it is trying to stay in tune with where we think we're going to see revenue and in what format it's going to look like. And so it's still early. Even though it doesn't feel early to us, it's early in the game with them, and that's kind of where we are right now. So we know there's a basic allotment adjustment coming. It's just going to depend on where the lobbying groups can decide what they're willing to give for the money, and what's the balance, what's the tipping point. But they're not going to offer new money until they know they're going to get some of the things they want. Sorry, but that's
Yeah. And particularly for us, because we are July 1, and we pass our budget in June, which is right when things are wrapping up. So some of this is just going to be, as quickly as we get the information, we try to build it into our models, and to a certain extent.
And one thing we'll talk about the team, and we haven't discussed it yet, but one of the conversations we will have is whatever we do with our compensation plan, we will make sure there are assurances in the compensation plan that allows the board to make other adjustments throughout the year if warranted around December and such, if we were able to actually take action on something like that.
So, tell me if I'm understanding this correctly. We really get money from the state potentially out this legislative session, more money, if they raise the basic allotment, or if they pass a special, each teacher gets a so much per year raise. That would be in addition to that.
Yes, sir, we think, but it's too early to tell.
I know.
Yeah, but correct. They could pass legislation that says so many dollars go to teachers, and they have to fund that.
And the basic allotment would stay the same, or they could make the basic allotment more and then not say anything about teacher salaries.
Mm-hmm. However, we believe if they even if they take that route, they will still say something about teacher salaries.
Mm-hmm.
It's not uncommon for them to say 35% of your new revenue has to go to teacher salaries.
Okay.
And if they increase the basic allotment, that could be the caveat.
So it's 6 of one, half a dozen of the other.
Mm-hmm.
Are they still having conversations around property values and escalations and recapture rates and
Yes.
trying to restructure that?
Well, I don't know if they're willing to restructure it, but they're trying to chip away at property values, and I don't know yet. I saw something from a recent bill that I need to read up on, but that's still the conversation. They're attacking property values.
And the Senate and the House are coming from different directions, so I think it's still yet to be determined which one they go with, whether it's going to be a cap on the values, like to change it to 5% instead of 10%.
Sure.
So there's some different bills out that haven't reconciled yet.
But the end result would be a change in our recapture potentially, either up or down, depending on what they choose to do. Good to know nothing while we try to plan.
Yeah, I had breakfast this morning with Steve West, ironically enough, and he was like, "Man, I don't miss this." But the challenge of building a budget while not knowing,
Yeah.
All right.
All right, well, so that is what I have, and now,
We're going to pass the baton
that's
over to, and I'll let Erin introduce herself.
Yes, good morning. I'm Erin Kalecki. Some of you will remember me from a few past years. I worked at TASB HR Services, and I'm a compensation consultant. I started in 2018 and then started working with Georgetown ISD in 2019. So I've been with you for a while. Glad to be here. My computer just went off. That's right. And also I wanted to introduce, I have a VIP with me today. Troy Richardson is here. He also works with me at TASB. He is the analyst on this project, so he does a lot of the data cleaning, Excel. He's basically an Excel genius and makes the projects infinitely easier for consultants. So we're glad choice here. Another quick point, I can offer each of you a 1 hour of board credit since this is a workshop setting, so congratulations. I'm gonna start pass these around. See, now we're friends.
Gonna go check the code.
That's right, that's why I was here.
Hey, you
Okay,
don't have to wait for the code?
if you know, you know.
Yeah.
So we'll go ahead and start. So I'd like to start with what our TASB case study process looks like. So this year we did a maintenance project for you. And we began with data collection in January, pretty much the day we all returned from winter break. We kicked off your project. So Sue and her team sent pay data, personnel information. We had a kickoff discussion during that time to talk about the project, to plan it going forward, talk about areas of concern for your district. And then there we did a market pay review. So that involved, we were gathering market data from districts surrounding you and also outside of school districts in some cases. And then we matched common jobs in Georgetown ISD to common jobs in other districts. And then from there, we built models for improvement. So we make sure that we're adjusting your pay structures, aligning them with the market rates for the positions within them. And then we also make recommendations to adjust employee pay as needed. So let's talk about some pay system objectives. Number one is that your quality pay system should be designed to recruit employees. You can do that through competitive entry rates and also competitive pay for experienced new hires. Your pay system is also designed to pay for the job value, so that goes back to that market batch we were talking about. So we want to make sure that your jobs are aligned with the market value for them, and that helps you prevent overpayment or underpayment for any job. Your pay system should also help you retain the quality employees that you already have. And one way to do that is by general pay increases that advances pay to the market rate faster. And of course, you can give market competitive pay raises. And then last, of course, is controlling costs, which is important to the board as you set the budget. And your salary plan and pay increases should be aligned and driven by your budget. I think this is probably a good point to pause and talk a little bit about the legislative session. And I realize this is challenging in a legislative year, if the legislature comes back and raises the basic allotment, and that does trigger, additional spending that you need to do based on your gains, I'll be working closely with these people to help make sure these plans are still in compliance. And we've also provided some language so you can adopt what you can afford, a pay increase that you can afford to give now, knowing that we can always go back later and adjust up if needed. Okay, so this is a sample of what a market-based pay system looks like. So you've got pay grades, and they provide a career path for your employees. Pay grades have minimum rates. Those are, of course, the starting pay for someone new to the job. Midpoint rates are the lines in the middle of the pay grades. Those we like to see aligned with the market rates for those jobs. And then the maximum rates are at the top, which of course that's the ceiling, that's the distance from the market that you're willing to pay for those jobs. And then when we talk about market pay strategy, I think it's nice to kind of pause here so the goal is to pay at the market rate. That's the value for the job, it's the target rate. But there are reasons that you would pay above market and reasons you would pay below market. If you have someone brand new to a job, it might make sense to pay them below the market rate as they're gaining experience. And then conversely, if you have someone who is very experienced, brings a particular skill set, your pay systems give you the flexibility to pay a premium for that job if you need to. But those structures have variance built in that's designed to allow you to offer a range of pay in each of the pay grades. Okay, so we're going to dig into the specifics of your pay study now at Georgetown ISD. And I'm going to start with our market sources. So these are the districts that we compared you to, and these districts were chosen back in 2019-2020. They were chosen because they're here locally and you compete with these districts for employers or employees. And it's also nice to keep that consistent because we can see how you progress over time. I'm showing you the enrollment numbers for those district peers and yours. This was pulled back in the fall, so the numbers, I know yours have increased a little bit, and probably some of the others have as well. Also, we have a couple of other market sources that we use, the Economic Research Institute and Comp Analyst. So these are non-school data sources that we use so that when we're comparing jobs that exist outside of school districts, we're making sure your pay is competitive there as well. And y'all can stop me if you have questions, feel free. So this is a snapshot of the demographics of your teachers. So your average teaching experience in Georgetown ISD is 11.6 years, which is above the state average of 11 years. More than half of your teachers and librarians have 10 or fewer years of experience, which is very typical with what we see in a suburban district. One thing that's nice about this chart is you do have a variety of experience levels among your teaching staff. So that tells me that you are successfully recruiting and retaining teaching staff at all levels. And this one is the demographics of your newly hired teachers. So Georgetown ISD this year hired 203 teachers new to the district, and this shows you how their experience falls. 203 teachers is 21% of your teaching staff. Experience of your newly hired teachers is also well distributed, though the majority, 56% of your newly hired teachers have 5 or fewer years of experience. And this is a snapshot of your teacher market salaries. So in this graph, Georgetown ISD teacher salaries are the orange line, and the blue line represents the local market median. Last year, you adopted a 4% pay increase for teachers. And just so you know, the market median pay increase for teachers out of your peer districts was 5% last year. It was kind of the Wild West in teacher pay increases last year. I'm sure you remember that. So this shows you the numbers behind that graph. So we survey for teacher salaries in 5-year increments. So you can see where your salaries align this year. I'm showing you the local market median, your percentage difference from the market, and then also the dollar amount difference from the market. So the big picture is your teacher salaries are within 2% of the market median in all surveyed years. Your teacher salary is most competitive at years 0 and 5. Last year there was a focus on starting teacher pay. It's a very common practice to focus on specific areas of the teacher structure each year because we know we don't have unlimited funds in public schools. But this year we are shifting that focus to your more experienced teachers, and I'll show you what that looks like in a little bit. And we also look at teaching area stipends. So these are stipends that are paid for typically hard to fill teacher assignments. These are not extra duty stipends, but teaching stipends. So you can see 4 of the common stipends that 3 of them that you pay now. I'm also showing you what the market median is. And then the final column shows you how many of your 13 peer districts are paying that particular stipend. And we will have some recommendations on these as well. But that's the market data. Okay, and now we're going to dig into your non-teaching staff. So we always show you how all of your staff compares to that market median. And we'll start with the exempt group. So I've broken the exempt groups, so these are your salaried employees, down into 4 categories. Central administration, so those are your directors, your chief strategists, so directors and above. Their pay overall is 5% below market. And then the next column tells you the number of benchmarks. So we don't have a benchmark for every single job, but 25 is a good number for those director level and above positions. Campus administration is the next group. Those are, of course, your principals and your assistant principals. Overall, their pay is 3% below market. And professional and technical is your coordinators. It's a slew of positions, basically salaried positions that don't fall in either of these categories. It's your counselors fall in there, your digital learning coaches. They are also 3% below market overall. And then the last one is it's not a new group, but I'm showing it a little differently this year. So you do have some, I would call them specialty teacher positions that we at TASB survey for separately. So I just thought it would be good to break that out and look at how those are paid. They're teachers, and they're commonly paid on the teacher structure as they are here. They're your ag teacher, your learning design coach, your librarians, and also your athletic trainer. So those positions are paid 1% below market overall. And we also look at your non-exempt staff. So these are your staff that earn by the hour that they work. So overall, the market comparisons look pretty good for this group. Your office and technical are your administrative assistants. That also includes like your payroll specialist, purchasing specialist, and then any technician type jobs in technology. So their pay overall is 2% below market. Your instructional support is, of course, all of your instructional classroom teacher aides, special education aides. Their pay is 6% above market overall. And then the last group is auxiliary, which includes custodian, maintenance, child nutrition. Their pay overall is even with the market. Now, I'll add that while these are all very positive numbers, and you'll remember that we made some significant increases to these employees' pay last year, we are still dealing with labor shortages, and we're seeing employers across the state, across the nation, continue to raise minimum pay rates. And I understand from discussions with your district that with the tight labor market, these positions are still challenges, and you are not alone in that. Okay, so we're going to dive into the recommendations. So recommendation 1 is to implement pay structure adjustments. So we do this every year. We want to align your pay structures. We align them midpoints, or realign them rather. Realign those midpoints with the market rates. We have proposed some improved starting salaries of, with this proposal, you'd have a $15 minimum across the entire district. So that's even a little higher than we raised it last year. Sometimes we need to add a few new pay grades, and we've recommended that. And then also sometimes either due to internal equity issues or just elevating external market rates, sometimes we recommend to adjust up a pay grade placement of a few positions, and we have done that this year. Recommendation 2 is to adopt a general pay increase to make sure you continue to align with the market. I've provided 2 models so far. Model 1 is a 2% model for all of your pay groups. Under Model 1, every teacher would receive a $1,150 general pay increase, and your starting teacher pay would be $53,850. Model 2 is a 3% general pay increase for all job groups. That includes a $1,750 pay increase for all of your teachers, and starting pay would be $54,450. I'm going to show you what that looks like. So we saw this graph earlier where, remember, you are the orange line, the market median is the blue line, and the dotted line is what your teacher structure would look like as compared to this year's market with the 2% pay increase. Now remember that I told you earlier that we put a focus on experienced teachers. Both models do include adjustments where we're further raising teacher pay towards the end of the structure. So there are adjustments added in years 7 through 29 that would be applied to your current teachers, but also new teachers that you might bring in. But basically what it does is you'll see the dotted line, we're aligning it with the market in years 15 and 20, but further pushing it up. If we hadn't added those adjustments, it would have been a little bit below, because that was where you were a little further behind. And Model 3 has those same identical adjustments, so the cost is almost exactly the same for for the adjustments. And you can see that that line pushes a little bit further. I always like to say, remember that the market line is a moving target. We're talking about next year's salaries, but we're comparing this year's market. And so that market line is going to move. But the hope is with Model 2 that you'd be, of course, giving an additional 1%, you'll be a little further along.
So Aaron, is that one of the things that noting about this strategy is that even though if other districts do a % raise as well, that blue line could go up, but the adjustments to the 7 through 29 should help close. Even though the line may move, the sway in our gap, if you will hopefully tighten up a little bit and move closer line, even if we're not.
Absolutely.
Is it safe to say that?
That is,
Okay.
that is the goal. I
Okay.
don't have a crystal ball though.
Right, but I mean, knowing that,
yes.
I mean, I talk to our peer superintendents all the time, that's the number one question, what are you gonna do? I don't know, what are you gonna do?
I know.
And no one wants to say what they're, but it's like, but the whole thing is like, I appreciate attention to specific years that we know we were a little lower than what we wanted. Obviously, we never want to be below, but you can tell there was a more significant gap there, and we want to close that as well. So I guess the whole point is, even if they do adjust, hopefully we'll still be in better position because we paid attention to those 7 through 29. Okay.
Absolutely. That is the hope.
All right, thank you.
Okay, so recommendation 3 kind of piggybacks on those adjustments for teachers. We actually look at adding adjustments across your employees. So a few things to note. So because we're raising all of your structures, we do that every year. But we are proposing that $15 minimum, and if I'm brand new in my job this year, I'm below that $15 minimum, probably even after the general pay increase. So what those adjustments to minimum do is make sure that after the general pay increase, anyone that's below the minimum for their pay grade, we're going to raise them up to 1% above that minimum. And the idea is that if you're hiring someone in new, that person will be making less than the person that's already here working for you, all experience equal. We've also proposed some teacher pay equity adjustments. That's something that we look at every year. So if I'm an employee in the teacher career path, I'm a counselor, an assistant principal, a coordinator that is teacher certified, we want to make sure that those individuals are making more on a daily rate basis than they would if they were in the classroom. So we're honoring that teacher career path and those leadership responsibilities that your teachers have taken on. So that's what those adjustments are. We've also applied some market equity adjustments to a few positions that we saw were a little lower than we liked. And then the strategic adjustments are a way that we can spend a little bit of money and drive pay towards that market rate faster. So after all other adjustments, if my pay in Georgetown ISD is still less than 90% of my midpoint, we're just adding another 1% onto that to spend a little and drive pay towards the market. And then the placement scale adjustments are applied to non-exempt pay groups. And what those do is spread pay based on experience throughout that pay range. So those are important, especially when you move the structure significantly, because you don't want to just raise them up to 1% above the minimum and have everybody compressed at the bottom of the range. We want to spread that pay. And then recommendation 4 is to consider increasing stipends for some hard-to-fill teaching assignments. So this recommendation is very much in collaboration with your district staff. So we're proposing your BCS stipend is currently at $1,500. We're proposing to take that to $2,000. Your ILC, CBVI bridges and 18 plus from $1,000 to $1,500. We want to add an ECSE stipend that aligns with that previous stipend of $1,500, and then also add a special education resource and inclusion stipend of $1,000. So that's one that you don't pay now, and we're proposing you pay. This is a way to remain competitive in some of the harder to fill positions.
What is ECSE?
It's
For
the
early
early childhood
special
special
ed,
education.
okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, and we know that those jobs are similar to the ILC and the CBVI, so it makes sense to give them that stipend as well.
Capital.
A lot of acronyms. Okay, so now the cost models. So I've broken these down into 2 separate cost models. Model 1 is the 2% general pay increase model. They're broken down by pay group. I'm showing you what the general pay increase costs for each of these pay groups. And then those adjustments come, of course, a cost as well, and that's itemized for each of these groups. And then there's a total estimated increase, and then the total amounts at the bottom. Let's see, one thing I wanted to point out here. So the teacher adjustments, I talked about the adjustments to years 7 through 29, so that does cost an additional $318,000 roughly. And then also important to point out, when we look at that auxiliary group, remember that's the one that we're most significantly raising that pay floor for. So the adjustments for that one are more than the general pay increase. So if you're giving a 2% raise to these employees, it actually amounts to quite a bit more because you're spreading that pay through the range.
And these numbers are based off current staffing or projected future staffing?
Correct. So great question. These numbers are based on your current employee data as of the date. It was a snapshot in time that it was sent to us mid-January-ish. So they can fluctuate a
And the
little.
projected budget deficit is based off current values, but new teachers to fill projected growth. So there's going to be some variance between these once we short it up.
There will be a little bit. The current budget does include vacancies. This one doesn't because they don't.
So that might be a wash at the end of it.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a good point, that this does not include, this is just pay
100%
increases
staffing, right.
and current staff, yeah. And so the big picture number is the 2% model has a price tag of about $3.1 billion, and it is a 3.3% budget impact based on your current payroll numbers from that snapshot in time. And then the 3% model, so the adjustments for the teachers, again, those remained almost identical because we're targeting that area. And you can see with the auxiliary staff, because you're giving more on the general pay increase side, then the adjustments go down, the cost is pretty similar for that as well. So on model 2, the 3% model, we're looking at about 3.9 million estimated. It's a 4.2% budget impact. answer any questions.
I wanted to comment really quickly that we work every year to try to align with the market, getting in some days that the market line is still going to keep going up and we're always chasing it. 2% below market is really not that much, so I don't consider that to be a huge detractor for us. But I like that we are continuing to try to improve on that. I know that in the past we have gotten a lot of flack for overpaying our administrators, and so we've made some conscious efforts to bring that more in line with the market. I hope that we don't get so far down that path that our administrators become underpaid. So I would caution against that. And then, you know, I'm glad that we're putting some attention into our auxiliary staff for sure. Some people that really work hard and deserve it. Everybody in this district works super hard and deserves it, but I like that we're paying attention in specific areas to try to make things more equitable for everybody. So I appreciate that, and good job, you guys.
Yeah. Good.
Thanks.
Excellent. Yeah.
It's been nice being able to bring the TASB team in every year since we started doing that. Is a whole lot.
It's
So
very
thank you.
helpful to see it all.
Yes.
We are glad to help, and thank you all for the work that you do on behalf of public school children. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Erin.
It's my pleasure. I'm going to sneak out.
But I get to keep going. So when we think about compensation and next steps, so you know, we are all certainly available for any follow-up questions or clarification that you have. But I guess from your guidance, we're looking kind of for your direction on what path we should go down given these couple of cost models that we have for the 23-24 compensation year. And our hope and goal would be to adopt our comp plan at the May board meeting, so then in turn Jennifer can then have that information to come up with the final budget that she'll need to present in June for approval. And I just wanted to kind of take a moment to say I appreciate Erin and Troy and all of your hard work, and we know the landscape is complicated right now, but I do think with our strategic goal around retention and recruitment that looking at general pay increases and some of our pay structure is going to be important for us as a district. So just kind of wanted to give a shout out to that and how it really fits in line with our strategic direction.
Excellent. Ma'am.
Okay. And I'm going to scoot back so I can see. We wanted to also, Jennifer and I wanted to give you a quick update today about what we know about our benefit plans for the upcoming school year. As you know, this will be effective as of September the 1st in our new benefit plan year, but we have some things that we'd like to share that we think are very exciting. You know, when we went through the strategic plan update, there was a resounding message of having good mental health for students and staff. So under our new plans for next year, we're going to be able to offer up to 3 virtual mental health visits per household per plan year. So we're very excited about that. Also working with our benefit partners, they're going to have a new concierge service that'll help employees plan for big things. Like I have a knee replacement, or I have some big procedure and I need someone to talk to me about what are the cost-effective ways I can do that and stay in network and things of that nature. So there'll be a new concierge service to help employees with that. We'll also be launching a new diabetes management plan as part of our medical plan for employees who might need that service to help them with disease management, nutrition, and employees can get up to like a $50 gift card once a quarter for participating in the program to try to help them stay healthy in that area. And we're also very excited about a free virtual help for acute care that's available 24/7 regardless of your plan. So if you're like me and I get the typical sinus infection a couple times a year and it's hard to get into your doctor, there'll be options available for you. But also, as we know, in the inflation world that we're living in right now, we do anticipate that our medical costs for our plans are going to increase by approximately 7.5%. And in talking, we would be proposing that we increase the employer contribution slightly to try to help in that area. We haven't increased the employer contribution for a number of years, so we would propose to you that we would increase that from $378 for employees who participate in medical to 422. And we anticipate that this could cost us around $750,000. Really is dependent on the number of employees who actually enroll in medical benefits in the fall. So, quick note about dental and vision. They're on their biannual renewal. We're going to be happy to report that our dental premiums are not increasing from next year. But one plan change in the dental area is that when there's a deductible on the plan, instead of it being per plan year, it's going to a lifetime deductible. So year after year, that'll help our employees because once they meet that deductible, it'll stay with them. Vision premiums are increasing just slightly from $1.14 to maybe $3.40 if you're taking like a family plan plus children. So just so you're aware too, we reached out to our comparison school districts to see what are you contributing toward the cost of employee medical care. And this chart kind of demonstrates that. If we were to move to the 422 per month, then you can see how that aligns. We're currently at 378 a month, which would be kind of toward the upper end of the chart. And then just kind of a quick snapshot of current year 22-23 versus next year 23-24 by the various tiers. And then again, we'll have 3 plans available for employees: a basic high deductible plan, a standard plan, and then an enhanced plan, which we have this year currently. So any clarifying questions?
I've got a question about the additional cost for medical, our contribution, the $750,000. Was that already included in the?
No, sorry.
Good question.
This is a huge unknown, of course, because we don't know what the legislature's going to do, but based on our current staffing and current funding, we're still looking at a 3.9, let's make it $4 million deficit. What TASB's recommended, if we go with the 3%, is another 4.
It's less this.
And then 750, we're at nearly a $9 million deficit.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
We only have about an 18% reserve,
Yeah.
give or take. So that would put us down to about 14-ish, 14.8 something, which would be pretty, yeah.
So what's the desired level for that?
The target is 20 to 30% is what we've traditionally and historically done.
And that weighs into our financial rating and bonds, and so those expenses compound into everything else. All right.
Well, after this, if you have any questions,
As soon as we get
other than finding $9 million, which I don't
Y'all
know.
need to go back to Austin and keep arguing for
Jennifer
money.
found us $8 million this year. Can't we
Yeah.
just bank on that?
I believe in you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
What else can you say?
Nice presentation. Thank you, Jennifer.
Do we have a school we can sell?
Yeah. That's what we just said. Is there anything else we can sell? Yeah.
I don't know if that matches with growth.
Welcome, guys. We just got some great news.
Hey guys,
You have-
is this where I ask for a pay raise?
Yeah.
This is not the time to ask for it.
It's always the time. You just don't like the answer.
Hi there, how are we?
We're good.
Good, I'm Mindy Petty, I'm the coordinator of health services for GISD. This is Dave Rainey. We're here to do your annual SHAC update. So the SHAC is the School Health Advisory Council. We meet 4 to 5 times a year, just depending on if we need that 5th meeting. All of our meetings are videoed and put on our website. Anyone is invited to our meetings. We do have 25 voting memberships, and we try to get equal representation from both feeder patterns. The SHAC should be composed of parents and community members. That should be the main goal, is to get most of them as the main SHAC members. But we do have we have staff members from GISD that will be district advisors. So we have Paige Holland for PE and health, Jason Dean's athletics, I'm medical health, Dave Rainey's mental health, and then we have Terry Daylock, who's our nutritionist, our dietitian.
So we have work of subcommittees that we go ahead and do, and we have this year, the triennial wellness assessment plan was the work of the PE and the nutrition. So every LEA participating in the National School Lunch Program has to conduct an assessment of their wellness policy. And so that was the priority work of those two subcommittees this year, and we went ahead and put that in the board weekly, I think last week or the week before. Just to kind of give you what it looked like. It's not a board, you guys don't have to approve it, we just need to make sure that we're doing that assessment every 3 years. So the main focus of this presentation is the work that we did for the mental health and medical health subcommittees. So our amazing Dave Rainey, who you all know, is going to be speaking to the mental health, and I'll be speaking to the medical health.
Well, hello everybody. It's good to see you finally. You've been having allowed me to get in front of you. So I'm gonna hit the start button here, because I know I like to ramble. If you know me, you know I like to talk, so I'm gonna start my little clock here. Yeah, my role in the district is support counseling services, so that's your school counselors and your school-based therapists. And so it makes sense that I was the liaison for the mental health subcommittee. These are a group of wonderful folks, community members like yourself, that find a passion. So when our meetings are over, we break out into subcommittees. This is a group of people that you saw in a couple of slides ago that kind of came over my way. And a lot of my role as a liaison was really to kind of give this team a peek behind the curtain. These are the things that we do in our school district. These are the things that align to our vision and our work. And with that in mind, they in turn would provide me with, hey, do you have any blind spots, right? Or have you thought about this? Have you considered this? And so my presentation today is really less about my work and more about what they provided me as a liaison back to you guys. The first thing that you'll see under this is that in seeing behind the curtain, they were really proud of some of the work that's going on right now. And they did want to lose track of continuing some of the work that we have going on. They love the work that we're doing on that Tier 1. You'll hear Tier 1 behavior approach. You'll hear it called a number of different things, but really this focus on the intrapersonal skills and the interpersonal skills that kids need coming into a classroom so that they can learn. We know that in order for kids to learn, they have to be able to have that self-awareness, have to be able to communicate and build positive relationships. These are all learner profile traits. So any work that was being done in that realm, they really supported that. The next bullet there is we're really trying to get our school counseling department to operate in what we call a multi-tiered system of support, an MTSS. The idea is that we really don't want to just work with students, only the students who reach this level of need, this level of acuity. We want to work with all students as school counselors. And so part of that work is getting out in front of kids, building those relationships by doing classroom lessons, working in a small group with them, working individually with them, and also knowing the boundaries between what a school counselor can do and what a school counselor can't do and referring out. We have, that model is called the Comprehensive School Counseling Program. And there is actually a state award that is provided. It's called the CREST Award. I never remember what the acronym for CREST stands as opposed to brushing our teeth, so I've written it up there. Counselors Reinforcing Excellence for Students in Texas. We went from 2 campuses last year that were honored with that award up to 6 campuses this year. So they were really proud to see that work going on and continue, because we know it's for all students, not just students who reach a certain level of acuity. We also have a school-based therapist team, our therapy team in our district. They're not only very proud of that work, but they're also very proud of the data that we collect behind that work. Because the reality is our goal on the school-based therapy team is to provide the highest quality to the most students as possible, and we're able to calculate some metrics of that, and we'll show you some of those today as well. And lastly, they love the fact that we're able to collaborate with the community. We've got great relationships with a number of our community providers, whether they're for-profit or nonprofit organizations, and they want to see that work continue. So blind spots, essentially what they wanted was more of everything we're doing, right? And the first one was really kind of a blip, that focus area of parent engagement. Mr. Shear, I've heard you say several times in prior board meetings, like, what are you aiming for? Like, how do you know, what are you aiming for? And a lot of times when it comes to our parent engagement, we say, oh, we had some parents come, we had 3 parents. Well, what, and our parent you, like, what is good in terms of what our goal is for parent engagement relative to how we reach there? And so they raised that as a potential blind spot for our department. We've done a number of different activities or ways that we've tried to send information out, and really what they've said is, how do you know if that's successful or not? And I think that's a really great question that they've raised. So part of it is really engaging with parents. They understand that we have a platform working with all the students to understand what the needs are, and really sharing that with parents and engaging with parents, but then also setting a goal of what engagement actually looks like. The next area is something that most of our following slides will really be focused on. They really want to look at counselor capacity. They wanted to show all the data that we've been collecting. It is ironic that we're saying this in lieu of the last couple of presentations, of course. So understanding that this doesn't operate in isolation, that we're part of a lot bigger of a group as well, right? And so we'll talk a little bit about some of those things that we do in collecting data. The first thing, of course, is they wanted to highlight what our standards are in terms of the National American School Counselor Association has a very lofty goal of a 1 to 250 student ratio. That is a not seen ever in the state of Texas, right? But then you look a little further down and we have a ratio from TEA as well as the Texas Counseling Association of 1 to 350. And again, that's in 2017, pre-pandemic, and we kind of know that there's been a ripple effect from the pandemic. That being said, these are aspirational goals, and clearly this isn't a request in isolation, right? There's a lot more going on, but we shouldn't lose what we're aspiring to be, right? Just because it may not be attainable in this moment. When we look at kind of what it looks like for our schools in Georgetown, you'll see, on the low end, elementary schools, we have traditionally 1 elementary counselor. So at the low end, we're projected at a campus with 320. Well, we really hit that 350 goal, right? In our middle schools, we have 2 counselors, so 660 on the low end, we're still there. At our high school, 5 counselors, that's 400. You guys can do the math. We're, on the low end, give or take, right? On the high end, we start kind of scratching our head. When we have an elementary school with 1,000 kids in it and 1 school counselor, it begins to kind of wonder, like, are we going to be able to achieve the goals of that counseling program? The good news is that high number right there, that campus just through an FTE allotment has already been addressed going into next year. So this presentation was done prior to the work that's been done from Sue and her team. And so on the high end, you're looking at now like 500 per 2, right? That'll be the first time ever in Georgetown we've ever had 2 counselors operating on an elementary school campus. And in the middle school, we haven't been able to address that quite yet with FTE allotment just because of growth, but there still is another round where principals have the opportunity to meet with a broader leadership team and kind of say, like, here's really where we need, this is our goals, and so that opportunity still comes up. And at the high school, we're still looking probably about the same, but also to draw into attention that each one of our high schools, in addition to their counseling team, has a 6th representative that's a broader from the CCMR specialist. So when you kind of throw that in there and peel some of the rules off, it doesn't quite look quite far off, but there are some things they want to make sure we didn't have blind spots to. Counselor use of time is another area that we keep data. We're required to keep this based on Senate Bill 179. This is known as the 80-20 rule. 80% of the counselor's time by state mandate is required to be utilized for counseling services, and they kind of peel off 20% for what they call non-counseling related roles. Of course, in order to measure this, we have to make sure that we're using the same ruler, right? We can't have one campus thinking something qualifies as one thing and another campus thinking. So our first mark was to create this little rule here that says we provide direct student services. These are obviously where our counselors are interacting directly with students. And so we have the large guidance and advising, and you'll see things like small group or classroom instruction. We have individual student planning, that's course advisement, student goal setting. We have responsive services, which of course are kind of that one-on-one or crisis response. We also have indirect student services, and these are still part of the model, right? These don't fall in the 20% range, and you'll see things like communicating to parents regarding student concerns, crisis response, referrals to outside community things. Now, they're considered indirect because we're not actually working directly with the student, but these are all within the 80% rule. Then we have that 20%. Our 20%, I'm really proud to say, I think I'm on my 5th year mark here. When I got here, this is a school district that was setting the pace for school counselors not coordinating standardized tests, school counselors not coordinating 504. You'll see both of those things already on the non-school tasks. But you'll see some things like data entry for choice sheets, 4-year plans, Skyward. Those are real paper pushing kind of things. The state doesn't say, hey, don't do it, it just says don't go above that 20%. And so in our time tracking, we kind of want to see where do we fall on those, right? And so the left pie chart there, I thought I was the only person that had a pie chart in today's presentation, but that got, I didn't realize that was with budget, so yeah, there goes that. That was supposed to be a moment of like, whoa. So on the left side, we have TDA's recommendations. This is just elementary school, and on the right side, you see kind of our elementary schoolers' time analysis across all elementary schools up to the semester. I'm just going to draw your attention to two little pieces of the pie graph. That's the green and the yellow. And what you'll see on TDA's recommendation is the system support green area is about 10%, and the guidance is 45%. Guidance being where you're supposed to be in front of classrooms, building relationships with all preventative work. Whereas on our elementary side, you'll see the guidance is closer to 18.5%, whereas the system support is up to 28%. So ideally, while we're still within our range for non-council related duties, which is well below 20%, we've got to get better about efficiency and creating systems to where our folks aren't spending as much time in the system support.
Define system support.
So system support, you kind of come back over here and you'll see things like, again, parents and teachers communicating regarding student concerns. If that takes time. If a student's dysregulated and you're on the phone and you're walking a parent through what's going on, that takes time. I don't know how much efficiency you can get there. That's just part of it, right? So again, these are all still part of the model. It's just we're spending more time supporting the work rather than working directly with our students. Again, crisis response. If you have a student who has a suicidal ideation, that could be 4 or 5 hours of your day. And that's just the nature of the job, and we're not saying we shouldn't be doing that. We're just kind of showing that that's why that's increased. That takes a lot of time and work. But it also takes away from that we get to work with all students, right? So it's pushing us towards a model that we don't want to go towards. In terms of, I mentioned earlier, our suicide screeners, we do the Columbia Suicide Risk Assessment here. It's an evidence-based suicide screener that's a layman's tool. It's not just a school counselor tool. It's something we should all probably go ahead and look up and be ready to ask some basic questions to make sure our friends, our community members, our family members are in a good place in terms of their thoughts of harm to self. Our left-hand side of that table is 2021 and January 2022, and our right-hand side is the current year. You'll see we've conducted about the same number of screeners. That doesn't pop off the page, but what does is where they're coming from. You can see an increase in our middle school screeners, and so we go back to talking about our middle school counselor ratio. We look at that number as well. We look at the concern for suicide as opposed to non-suicidal self-injury. That's another reason why we do the screener. We'll see an increase of 10%. And I think the thing that really pops up the page is that last, or next to last row, which you go from 7% resulted in a formal assessment. We're not formally assessing students, we're asking screener questions, and then based on the results of that, we give parents a call and they can determine the next best steps, which include calling, either taking their kid privately somewhere, taking to an ER, calling a mobile outreach team to come and assess the student, formally assess the student for next best steps. We went from 7% of our screeners last year resulting in that next step up to 35%. The last piece of data is something that we didn't track last year, but now these are all data points that our state requires that we submit to them, obviously all de-identified. But we need to make sure that we provide these as part of a bigger threat assessment report that we do, not just for suicide, but also homicide, homicidal ideations, I should say. And so the last column there is 50% of our students went to RTC, stands for Residential Treatment Center. Okay, so those are kids that have an acuity where they need to be in a safe place and get leveled out so they can come back and take the next steps, come down.
So let me ask you this,
yes.
could you go back to the 35%?
Of course, yeah.
Is that when a teacher suspects, or somebody suspects, and then a counselor would pull someone into the room and do the formal assessment? Or is it a group assessment? How did you come up with the 35%?
So our screener, our licensed school specialist of school psychology can do a screener. We have school counselors that can do a screener. We've got school-based therapists who do a screener. In fact, the reality is any of us could really do a screener. Like I said, the screener is a layman's tool. In fact, that's probably so bad. So that's not so. It's time. You what's that? Yeah, totally time. Yeah, thank you. 13 minutes already. 2 minutes. So the screener, once they do the screener, they've got some next steps. A student would say, yes, I have a plan to do this. Yes, I have the means to do this, or no, right? And so regardless of whatever the outcome of that screener is, we're always coming home and we're deferring to the plan. We're never going to give the option of a student going back to class or getting on the bus unless the team that consults around that screener feels like that's an
But
option.
it's a one-on-one kind of a deal.
It's a one-on-one kind of
Got
deal.
it.
Yes,
That's
ma'am.
all.
Yes, ma'am. And then it turns into assessment. So yeah, you can think about time there. You're thinking about that system support.
Thank you.
Like I mentioned before, we've got a school-based therapy team. Last year we were at 4 team members. This year we've gone up to 5 team members, so that's definitely a point of pride. These are licensed professional counselors, licensed clinical social workers, licensed master's social workers when they're under supervision. So this is not the work of a school counselor. This is now when a student reaches through that MTSS and now needs some additional support, either at school or working into the community, either a direct or indirect report. That's the work they do. So their role is to provide short-term early intervention and transitional direct services, right? We're a public school system, right? So we have to really define the fact, this is not for acute care. This is not for family systems work. This is not for long-term, year-over-year work, right? So we've going to have 13,000 students. We want to make sure this is available in K through 12. And if we work with only 10 students, then it never would be. When students don't meet that definition, now their role moves into more of that social work. How do we get these folks connected either through a for-profit or a nonprofit in the community that they can receive these ongoing services? On the left-hand side, you've got the entire academic school year last year with 4 team members, and on the right-hand side, you've got this semester with 5. And you can see that we've already got more referrals that semester than we did last year. I think this is excellent. That means these folks are being utilized. I mean, when we put the FD to that 5th position, it wasn't a waste of money or resources. You see that we went from 161 directly served students that semester to 144. Obviously, our per session will be increased because we track that information as well. You can see that the TCHAT, which is a Texas Child Health Access through Telemedicine, that's provided by the state. We partner with them, and they provide another referral source for that for members who need it. You can see that those are going to double by the end of the year. We also created a system called the Mental Health Collaborative, which didn't exist last year, that allows us to send an email to providers in the community, and they can respond and call parents to see if they can support them. And then we also have Care Solace. You'll see the Care Solace numbers are down because we increased this other option that didn't exist.
Just want to say real quickly, this is one of the most amazing things that we have done in this district, and I support it so much.
Awesome. So, like I said, the reality is that I don't think that committee, as a liaison of that committee to you guys, I don't think they're saying stop doing anything or you have blind spots. They're just saying when the opportunities arise, know what we aspire to become, and if we can know the need and we can address it, we'll take the opportunity to address it. So that's it from the mental health side of things.
Good job, Dave. Thank you so much.
You could just continue clicking. I have 2 slides.
We know you like to drive. Yeah. We know you like to drive.
So for the medical health subcommittee, they really wanted to focus on substance use, which of course kind of aligns, like it all works together, but that's what they really want to focus on. So they want to know, what are we doing currently within our systems? They want to know, what are we doing to survey our kids and assess our kids? And we don't currently have a process. We're not collecting data. We don't have a tool that we're giving to all students about substance use and what grades they're using it, why they're using it, how often they're using it, what they're using. And so we see that that's a deficit there. Prevention, what did we do for substance use this year? We have done a lot of good stuff. We brought in a presenter from UT. She came in on January 9th. She gave a community presentation. And I was pleasantly surprised with the turnout because I know Leander had that same presentation and they only had 30 people at their presentation. So for a district of 13,000, I was really proud of that.
That's great.
Side note, it was the national championship football game that night as well.
Yes.
I mean, I'm
Yes.
saying the attendance may have been
You
even better.
have definitely.
The crest award ceremony.
That was not
Super Bowl Sunday. Super Bowl Sunday.
That was not the dig. I apologize if that came across wrong with me.
No, so what else are we doing for prevention? We do have PE, lessons giving through PE and health classes that meet our TEKS. We had Williamson County Sheriff Division come in and give lessons grades 6 through 12 on substance use. And I can tell you that I've had 2 parents reach out to me personally and say what a difference it made for their kids. So I know that the kids were hearing those things. And then we have a vaping prevention action team, I don't know if you're aware of, but Stacy Sebeska is leading the work on that. It includes nurses, community partners, principals, Life Steps coalitions come in, and they are working on an action team to do an action plan. What can we do as a district to help with what's currently going on in regards to substances? They wanted to know what interventions we're doing, so at the GAP, we have Blue Bonnet Trails there. They have a certified substance abuse counselor that meets with students. STEP hired a full-time substance abuse counselor, and we have our GISD school-based therapy team, and they're really there for those short-term early intervention, trying to see when a kid's going down the wrong path to intervene then instead of later on. We also had some really good transparent conversations of, we are an education system. What can we do and what is outside of our focus? And I think that that was pretty well received within the shack. They understood, if you go to a doctor for a broken arm, they're going to refer you out to an orthopedic surgeon usually, right? So it's the same here. Once it's become a problem and it's not in the early intervention side, then we do need to refer them out. So what they wanted to see us do is they would like us to utilize some type of assessment and survey tool. Thanks, he's telling me to click. I told him just to keep clicking. So they would like to see us start surveying our kids and getting information from them about all types of why they're using substance abuse or substances. They also want us to collect data from the kids that we know are using, mostly at the GAP. And I know that the principal at our GAP has really worked hard to collect data this year. So I do think we are going to have data from her end, but they would like to see it district-wide. And then they also wanted to hear student voices on our vaping action team. They kept saying, why don't you have students? Well, this is the first time we've had the vaping action team, and we would love to have student involvement. Not every student's willing to do that, so we will for sure try to have that next year. Preventative-wise, they want us to continue addressing instruction. They would like a more robust substance abuse system, or not just meeting the TEKS, but they want something evidence-based. They want us to be teaching it in more grades, whatnot. So we said we would look into that. They also suggested peer recovery support groups, and then groups on secondary campuses that students can run, student-led groups. And then the intervention, like we talked about before, they wanted more school-based therapists. We did increase from 4 to 5, but then we also had that conversation of, we want to get the kids before it becomes a problem, before they're addicted, and then once they're addicted, we need to go to the specialists that are outside of the school district. And that is what their recommendation was for mental health. Is there any questions?
We had two parents present at school board meeting last month about fentanyl specifically, and substance abuse is just so big. We're talking about everything from cigarettes and beer up to fentanyl. Are we proportionally structuring our education toward the things that are really dangerous? I mean, it's nice certainly to say that you shouldn't smoke cigarettes, but fentanyl's killing people.
Yeah.
It is killing people. I think they're wanting an overall general evidence-based program, but that would discuss fentanyl and whatnot. I think we're not seeing fentanyl as the main substance kids are using, but everything we should include that in the education portion.
Or maybe even skew it if that's what's actually causing deaths.
Yeah.
I believe, wasn't that part of the conversation in January 9th?
It was, so that a lot of that presentation, well, a portion of that presentation was about fentanyl itself, all the myths and all the truths, and she really did help parents to understand what was going on there. But again, yes, that is causing our deaths, but that's not what we're seeing our kids using the most of.
Oh, I wouldn't doubt that at all.
Yeah, but yes, we did address that in that meeting.
And y'all did have a fentanyl-specific training at the high school, like with the kids, y'all pulled them out?
The Williamson County Collaborative came in and they talked about it, yes ma'am, and in the secondary, or in the middle schools.
That's great.
Any other questions for us?
Oh, great job.
Dave
you,
loves to
guys.
answer
Thank you.
questions. He
Appreciate
loves
y'all.
to
Thank you.
the next thing on our agenda, I think I kind of have to make this more of a formal. I don't think I ever actually called a formal meeting. So I'll just say that I hereby call a formal meeting to order. It's 12:15 p.m. We do have a quorum of board members present, and we are going to go into closed session as authorized by Texas Government Code Section 551071, 074, 082, and 0821 to consider the superintendent's contract and related actions.
We have to hike over to next door. Yes, we're going right
And
back.
we'll call this meeting. Oh, turn this on, turn this on.
Turn it on.
Ready?
Okay, we have all the board members back, so I call this meeting back into open session at 12:41 p.m. We do have one item to take action on, but before I do that, Dr. Brent would like to say a few things.
All right, so as you may or may not know, publicly, I am on a 5-year contract, which means today I've asked the board.
You got this?
I got it. To take action on my retirement. And after that action, an email will be sent to our leadership team for a short meeting this afternoon, and we'll send out more information to staff. And I will be sending out communications to local media, hopefully by 5 p.m. today. But I have asked the board to consider taking action on my retirement.
Don't worry, we said no.
So I'll take a motion.
With sadness and joy, I move.
In a second.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? I don't want to say this motion carries, so I'm not going to say it.
That action is to be, I would become the superintendent emeritus May 1st to June 30th, which means I'm here to work with the district and support the interim and the board as they start the search process, getting input from staff and such, and it'd be effective June 30th, 2023.
So there will be a lot more communication coming in the days and weeks ahead.
And I'll still be at the next board, I'll be at the next board meeting. I'm still here for the
Yes,
day.
he's still here.
Yes, for the
But
board meeting.
like Melanie said, happy and sad. This is bittersweet. But this is a wonderful opportunity for you. This is a wonderful opportunity for the district. Thank you. Thank you.
Not how I wanted to tell this team, but it does require board action, so I had to do it that way. Know that I would love to.
Okay. I will entertain a motion to adjourn. Okay, and second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Meeting adjourned.